Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 2. I am Francis Adet, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakodwan. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Buhari approves 3 orthopedic hospitals. Next move over strike actions. Plus,
regions
deadly
that rely
blast
on the
reportedly rips through crowded Kabul mosques in Afghanistan. We will bring you details of these stories and more in a moment. First in the news today is a report that President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the establishment of 3 additional orthopedic hospitals. Health Minister Osage Henry made the announcement at the inauguration of the Primary Healthcare PHC Leadership Challenge at the State House. The event was organized by the Nigerian Governors Forum (NGF) in collaboration with development partners. Henry disclosed that the President approved the siting of the orthopedic hospitals in 3 regions, with 1 each in the Northeast, the North Central, and the South-South, situated in Benin, Jos, and Jalingo, respectively. Meanwhile, the Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed said 471 billion 9 million naira had been disbursed to states under the World Bank States Fiscal Transparency, Accountability, and Sustainability SFTA's program. She added that all the 36 states had fully domesticated the fiscal performance in their public financial management system. Away from that, the federal government has justified its inability to achieve its promised 5,000 megawatts electricity generation for the country due to shortage in gas supply. The Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, who disclosed this at the Federal Executive Council FEC meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House in Abuja, said government had entered into a firm contract with the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading (NBET) PLC power generation and remained around 4,000 megawatts because of the challenge of gas supply. He further explained that the drop of electricity supply has many contributory factors, which includes the cost, issues of gas to some power plants. In a separate development, the federal government has concluded plans to enforce a ban on foreigners purchasing agri-commodities at the firm gates. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment Otumba Adeniyi Adebayo made this known while inaugurating an interministerial standing committee in Abuja.
Federal government has
Adebayo said the document had been presented by the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment and Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development on March 9th this year for approval by the Federal Executive Council (FEC). Adebayo said the move was part of the government's efforts to provide the enabling environment for the commodity subsector to thrive. He decried the exploitation of farmers by foreigners who come to Nigeria to mop up agricultural commodities at the farm gates and in turn offer farmers prices below market value. He charged the committee to come up with appropriate implementation mechanism and guidelines for implementing the approved FEC memo, as well as liaise with states, local governments, and other relevant stakeholders nationwide to enforce the ban and compliance. Meanwhile, the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development has refuted claims that it spent 18.9 billion naira on bush clearing during the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020. The ministry, in a statement by its Director of Information, Dr. Joel Oruche, noted that the statement, which emanated from the House Public Account Committee, must have been quoted out of context. According to the statement, the ministry did not receive any audit query to warrant summon by the committee. It noted that the ministry only carried out bush clearing and land preparation of 3,200 hectares in 8 states, namely Osun, Ekiti, Edo, Cross River, Kaduna, Kwara, Plateau, and Ogun, as allocated by state governments for 2.5 billion naira. Other projects executed by the ministry during the COVID-19 pandemic, which included the construction of rural roads in the 6 geopolitical zones, soil sampling and mapping, farmers registration, as well as rehabilitation and the equipping of 4 national soil laboratories. It added that the projects were executed and verified by relevant government agencies and were part of the stimulus package under the Agriculture for Food and Jobs program of the federal government to generate employment and grow the economy to mitigate the effect of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. We move to education now, where in an attempt to curb examination malpractices, the Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, has warned schools nationwide to tighten the nose on examination malpractice. This was as he urged examiners to work closely with law enforcement agencies to crack down on examination malpractice. Adamu made the call at the 47th session of the State House Ministerial Briefing organized by the Presidential Communications Team at the Asa Rock Villa, Abuja. According to him, despite efforts to raise the integrity of the examination system in the schools nationwide, the ministry still grapples with malpractice perpetrated both at the Exams Council and school levels. He lauded the Joint Admission Matriculations Board for its efforts at stemming malpractice, saying more work needs to be done. Meanwhile, the National Strike Organizing Committee of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has met to decide on the way forward concerning the ongoing strike by the union. The committee, which is made up of senior officials of the union, also noted that zonal meetings will commence by the end of the week, after which branches would go ahead with congresses. Meanwhile, ASU President Professor Emmanuel Osodeke has urged Nigerian students not to vote for politicians who have their children studying in institutions outside the country. Osodeke spoke on a Twitter Space webinar organized by Premium Times, tagged ASU Strike Revitalization Fund and the Way Forward. Recall that the recent meeting the union had with the federal government ended in a deadlock on Tuesday. On power generation, the National Union of Electricity Employees, NUEE, has called off its nationwide strike. The decision followed an emergency meeting with the Minister of Labor and Employment, Chris Ngige, on Wednesday. The minister's spokesman, Olajide Oshudun, announced that Ngige intervened in the industrial action. Meanwhile, NUEE Secretary General Joe Ajero has assured that electricity would be restored across the country. Recall that the workers shut down all transmission companies of Nigeria, TCN, offices yesterday. In another development, the Registrar, Chartered Institute of Treasury Management, CITM, Olumide Adedoyin, has insisted that there are no proper safeguards in place to ensure the effective implementation of the Treasury Single Account, TSA. Adedoyin, who addressed reporters in Abuja, also called for continuous training and retraining of personnel handling the process, as some saddled with the responsibility do not understand it effectively. Speaking further, Adedoyin said that laws governing procurement be further domesticated as a means of checking wastage in the system. On financial crime, the executive chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Abdul Rashid Bawa, has said the commission had secured 4,430 convictions in 19 months. The EFCC boss said the war against corruption is a worthy fight to save the soil of Nigeria and secure the future generations. He urged the media to expose the corrupt in the society instead of celebrating them. Bawa, who spoke at a workshop on economic and financial crimes reporting for journalism in Abuja, said the EFCC's conviction rates were unbeaten in Africa, adding that the commission was prepared to protect the naira from abuse by those he called crooks and foreign exchange black marketers. We move to Yobe, where the State House of Assembly has tasked the executive arm of government in the state to provide additional humanitarian assistance to victims of flood disaster across affected communities of the state. The House gave the charge in a motion of urgent public importance moved by the member representing Jajere constituency, Kiroma Buba Mosque, on the need to assist the victims of flood disaster in the state. In the separate contributions on the motion, the Deputy Speaker of the House, Mohammed Issa Bello, Leader of the House, Bukar Mustafa, Abdullahi Adamu Banzua, as well as Kashala Ajia Meina, among others, sympathized with the flood victims and stressed the need for the state executive to look into the problems for a lasting solution to the annual disaster in the state. The members of the House who spoke at length on the disaster said it has caused colossal loss of lives and destruction of farmlands, houses, and property worth millions of naira in their respective constituencies across the state. They also stressed the need for the government to direct the local government sanitation committees to clear all the drainages and construct additional ones, especially in the water areas, in order to control the annual flood phenomenon. We move to Africa, where the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi has taken the helm of the Southern African Development Community (SADC) during the 42nd Ordinary Summit of Heads of State and Government of the organization held in Kinshasa from August 17th and closing today, 18th of August 2022. The Kinshasa Summit is hosting a dozen SADC heads of state and will review progress in regional integration in line with SADC aspirations, which envision an industrialized, peaceful, inclusive, competitive, middle to and high-income region where all citizens enjoy sustainable economic well-being. President Felix succeeds Lazarus McCarthy Chukwera, President of the Republic of Malawi. Meanwhile, the outgoing SADC president has called upon member countries to be independent of external influence, especially the Democratic Republic of Kenya.
One outside Africa who is coming to build Africa the way we want it to be built. Not the Americans, not the Europeans, not the Asians. They must give us a road here, or they may give us a road here and there, a stadium here or two, a few $1 million that are nothing more than pocket change to them, and that are nothing compared to the amounts they give each other as Westerners or Easterners. The plunder that we have allowed the West to conduct here in the DRC is a sin that we must repent of, resolve, and refuse to see repeated anywhere else in our region.
Still in Africa, at least 26 people have reportedly been killed and dozens more injured in forest fires that have devastated northern Algeria. The country's Interior Minister, Kamel Belgeorge, said 24 died in El Tav near the border with Tunisia, as well as a mother and daughter in Sativ. Reports say 350 residents have been evacuated in various provinces. The Civil Protection Agency said El Tav was the worst hit area, with 16 fires in progress. On the foreign scene, Chinese planes are firing rods into the sky to bring more rainfall to its crucial Yangtze River, which has dried up in parts as swaths of the nation fall into drought and is faced with the worst heat wave on record. Several regions on the Yangtze have launched weather modification programs, but with cloud cover too thin, operations in some drought-ravaged parts of the river basin have remained on standby. China's Ministry of Water Resources said in a notice that drought throughout the Yangtze River basin was adversely affecting drinking water security of rural people and livestock and the growth of crops. Reports say central China's Hebei province became the latest to announce it would seed clouds using silver iodide rods to induce rainfall. At least 4.2 million people in Hebei have been affected by severe drought since June. Hebei Province Emergency Management Department said more than 150,000 people there have difficulties accessing drinking water, and nearly 4,000 hectares of crops have been damaged because of high temperatures and drought. Still on the foreign scene, Kabul police say a huge explosion has reportedly ripped through a crowded mosque in the Afghan capital, Kabul, killing 21 people with 33 people injured. Kabul police spokesperson Khalid Zaran said Wednesday's blast occurred during evening prayers, adding that the mosque's imam is reported to be among the dead. Recall that a week after an Islamic State, its militant killed a pro-Taliban cleric in a suicide bomb blast, also in Istanbul. The head of the medical charity Emergency, which runs the city main hospital, told newsmen his group had already been threatened and had treated 35 people, including children. And still to come in the news, Falconets beats Canada 3-1, face Holland in quarterfinal. To stay with us. Much thanks for staying with us. On the business news, power generation and distribution companies owed Nigerian banks 830.09 billion naira amid the lingering problems plaguing the sector since it was privatized over 8 years ago. This is according to the Central Bank of Nigeria's June 2022 data reports, which says that while power generation firms and independent power producers owed banks 562.19 billion naira, power transmission and distribution firms were indebted to the tune of 273.89 billion naira. Recall that the federal government officially privatized the 6 successor power generation company and 11 distribution firms that were unbundled from the defunct Power Holding Company of Nigeria. The acquisitions by the co-investors were financed mostly, a significant portion of which was provided by local banks. Still in business news, Emirates Airline has announced the suspension of its flight operations in Nigeria from September 1st, 2022. It said the suspension became necessary following its inability to repatriate its funds from Nigeria. International carriers operating in Nigeria said they have repeatedly complained about their inability to repatriate funds to their home countries and have raised this concern on many occasions with officials of the Federal Ministry of Aviation as well as those at the Finance Ministry. Reportedly, black funds have risen to about $600,000 million, stressing that the issue is due to the inability of the central bank the United States dollar available for the carriers to repatriate. In a statement, Emirates Airlines stated that it has tried every avenue to address the challenges in repatriating funds from Nigeria and have made considerable efforts to initiate dialogue with the relevant authorities for their urgent intervention to help find a viable solution. It, however, noted that should there be any positive developments in the coming days regarding Emirates' blocked funds in Nigeria, the airline would, of course, reevaluate its decision. In health, members of the Nigerian Governors Forum have pledged to progressively allocate more of their resources to primary health care through efficient budgeting aligned to annual operational plans. They also pledged prompt release of the approved budget to their state's primary health care boards and primary health care facilities. The forum's chairman, Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State, gave the pledge at the forum's meeting at the State House, Abuja. Fayemi said the governors would recruit the required quantity and quality of the workforce in all primary health care facilities in line with the minimum staffing requirements appropriate for their level according to each state's minimum service package. Still in health, the UK government has announced that thousands of people in Britain infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated blood transfusions will receive a compensation payment decades after the scandal. The government said the tax-free payments to survivors of the scandal and bereaved partners of the thousands estimated to have died from the contaminated blood would be made by the end of October. Recall that thousands of people with hemophilia contracted hepatitis C and HIV after receiving blood transfusions, mainly from the United States, through the state's National Health Service (NHS) in the 1970s and 1980s and 1990s. Reports say due to a shortage of blood products in Britain, the NHS brought much of the stock from US suppliers whose donors, including prisoners and other groups at high risks of infection, had been paid for the blood. Meanwhile, an estimated 2,400 patients died after being infected through contaminated blood products in the 1970s and 1980s. In sports, the race for the 5 tickets available for African countries for the 2023 FIBA Basketball World Cup has tightened up, and it has prompted teams to select some of the best talented players. While African basketball fans are familiar with the names of most of these outstanding players, there are a few faces that are yet to make their names heard and talked about across African arenas. Amongst the 10 new stars expected to shine at the qualifiers include the Tigers' Jose Okogie, before making his debut for Nigeria at the 2019 FIFA Basketball World Cup. The 23-year-old had featured for the USA in the 2017 FIBA Under-19 basketball in Cairo. Reports say this will be his first appearance on the continent of Africa with a Nigerian uniform on. Meanwhile, from August 26 to 28th, the remaining 12 teams will compete in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, and Monastir, Tunisia, where 10 players are set to break out in Window 4 of the World Cup African qualifiers. Still in sports, Nigeria under-20 girls Falconets set a World Cup group stage perfect record for themselves. Head coach Chris Musa had said before the encounter that his girls would seek to win, even as a quarter-final ticket was already in the bag. In order to suss goal of the competition in an accidental manner following goalkeeper Omin Oyono's poor management of a back pass from Jamoke Alani that granted Kala Movac a fortuitous goal in less than 2 minutes. The Falconets into the last 8 on Monday opening scored from the penalty spot in the 24th minute to pull the Falconets level. On our entertainment news, singer Peter Okoye, popularly known as Mr. P, has taken a swipe at jobless graduates with misplaced priorities. The P-Square twin in a post chided graduates who do not deploy their smartphones for productivity, especially on social, for their joblessness. And still on entertainment, the Lagos State Police Command has the singer took to Twitter on Wednesday. In the tweet he later deleted, saying he just spat on a police officer and it felt so good. Reacting, Lagos Police Command spokesperson Benjamin Hunduyan said the police for assaulting an officer. Find on the website spectrumtv.ng. You've been watching Spectrum News at 2.